Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host, Flavia Barris, as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media, including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur.
Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Today we get to speak with Zach Zimmer. He was busy climbing the corporate ladder, getting 4 weeks of vacation per year, sounds familiar, until he changed his mindset and actions. 6 years later, he walked away from a 6-figure W-2 life at the age of 39 and now never uses the word vacation as it's just his normal passive income life. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Hey, thanks for having me. Your whole aura, name, focus of the show is what I love to talk about and preach and try and get others to get on the same mindset of living their life.
It dovetails really well with what we listeners of this podcast love to chat through, which is how do we accomplish having that lifestyle where we don't feel like we are living to work, where it's just where we're spending every single waking minute, and just to have a little bit more passive income, a little bit more life in our life. So tell us a little bit, like, how did you end up with what you're doing today? What's your story?
I was raised traditionally. My father had degrees. My mother worked all through my life. I was raised in this, hey, you're going to go to college, you're going to get degrees, and you're going to go into the career. And that's all I understood. And a funny thing was I was actually given Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 1998, which I believe is the year after it came out or 2 years after. I was given it by a guy trying to recruit me into multi-level marketing to be an independent business owner. And I remember the stories in that book. And I mentioned them to my parents, like some of these things that were eye-opening to me. And I remember mentioning them to my parents, and I was just like flopped off. Oh, no, they didn't understand that. And that wasn't certainly something they could talk about with me. And yet that book got thrown into a box and moved around with me for years and years. And then I went and got a great degree in manufacturing systems management. So 2 years of engineering, 2 years of business management. And then I started into more of a supply chain and manufacturing systems roles with big billion-dollar companies in manufacturing. And that put me, I bounced around a couple different states and then came back to Ohio. And I landed at a company that Northeast Ohio, top cash flow in the country. Top 5, top 10, all the time in terms of rental cash flow. And this company that I was working for had a nice bonus program. And somewhere along the lines, some of these managers, they started buying rentals. And I remember I had a couple different bosses, like in a weird type of hybrid role. And one of my bosses, had some duplexes. And each year when he would get his bonus, that's what he would do. And I remember hearing his story. And then a really close friend of mine in the company, he worked in a different department with these guys that were going and buying rentals, basically with credit cards. So this is 2010, 11, and they were basically able to take like cash advance checks and go buy these properties for $20,000, $25,000 that were on Craigslist. Or on Zillow wasn't a thing yet. So I think a lot of it was just buying properties off Craigslist that people were trying to get out of. And then they basically could buy them with that credit card advance check, throw some money into it to rehab it, and then take it to a lender that would go and appraise that at $45,000. And they would pay off their credit card advance and pocket $5,000 and then cash flow. And I remember hearing about these and I was like, wow, that kind of reminds me of that book. And I circled back to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had moved that book around through college and some houses and states and still had it and read that story and that whole parable again and was like, something different, something to get into. And at that time, we were living the traditional path. We had just gotten married. So we were the traditional dinks, your double income, no kids. And every time we got a raise or a promotion, what do? You spend it, right? New furniture, redo the patio, do this, do that. You increase your costs as more money would come in. You never thought about investing it. And so I needed money to get into real estate. And I remember going to my dad and saying, hey, I found this duplex in Canton City. And I ran the numbers. I remember going to him for a loan and showing it all to him. And he turned me down. Said, nope, that's not a good place to put your money. And no, you need to just focus on your career and not get distracted. You just got married and this and that. So I remember thinking, my dad he doesn't get it, doesn't know what he's doing. And so fortunately, I'm very grateful that he did turn me down, because that was like a D class area duplex that could have ruined my whole appetite for investing had I gotten into that. But fast forward about 3 or 4 months, and I did get my bonus as an engineering manager there, which was about $20,000. And this is 2012. And I remember I had pivoted more looking into single families, as that's what my friends in the company were doing. And I found 2 single families. I originally found one and had already talked to Huntington about getting a loan and using my bonus money as the down payment. And they were like, oh, yeah, yep, you guys have great income. And after I'd gotten that first property under contract for 50,000, a day or two later, another one, 2 or 3 blocks came up, and I called Huntington. Hey, could I buy 2? Oh yeah, and they laughed like, "Yep, as many as you want to buy. You guys are great. We had great W-2 income, which the banks love." And so that was it. So that was, people ask, how did I get here? How much decisions? That was the main critical decision, to take that risk and not just go take that $20,000 and take an amazing vacation or upgrade a car or do something different to the house. We took that $20,000 and we bought 2 single-family properties in Akron, a $40,000 house and a $50,000 house, with Huntington loans. And I thought that was it. Hey, we spent the money. We got these 2 great properties. We're about to have a child. We're going to cash flow about $600 to $700 a month between the 2 of them. That's going to pay for our weekends. And then in 18 years, I can sell these houses, and that's going to cover at least half, maybe, who knows, maybe all of college for our child that was about to be born. And so I was like, man, that's great. Our weekends are covered, and I don't have to worry about saving for college. And that was all I thought it could be. And so that was the rest of 2012 of just, hey, this is it. We got 2 rentals. Let's continue focusing on my career and bleeding for the company and getting into the office at 6:30 and working 9, 10 hour day and coming home at night and kids. And finally, somewhere probably in 2012, 2013, is where I started to find more online content, as well as still hearing the stories of those at work, of continuing to proliferate and build the model. And I found local lenders, we call them portfolio lenders, your community banks, your 3, 6, 7 branch banks covering your state and maybe the next state. And they love investing in local cheap properties, whereas you can't go to Chase and get a $50,000 mortgage. And Huntington had a limit on how many they would do. And these community banks would also finance the rehab, which at that time, we didn't have a lot of cash to throw at properties. So taking these loans with the community banks where they would finance the rehab and give me the money up front as long as it was going to appraise, became how I bought the next probably 4 or 5 single families in 2013. And through there, still a lot of struggles and learning of contractors and agents and how to manage these properties. And that's where I found rent to own, which is, I love that model. I still do it today. And I find a different type of mentality of tenant that allows me to live the passive life, as I talk about now. But that's an owner-occupant mentality, not a transient mentality, that allows that rental to be more passive. They know they're responsible for taking care of it. And you just have a different mindset of how they treat the property. And so that helped to mate and create passivity out of a rental business to allow me to still focus on the career and build this whole thing as like a snowball on the side, right? Not touching that, living off the job. And so between like Bigger Pockets was a great learning resource. And so over the next 4 years, I bought over 50 single family homes and put them into rent to own options here in Northeast Ohio that quickly about 3x'd my income as a director of continuous improvement in the corporate world. And I allowed my wife walked away and team to just take care of the kids after we had our second. And yeah, we just lived off my W-2 and let that snowball bigger and bigger until in 2019, when, it's when I finally walked away from a six-figure W-2 that I probably, when I was growing up, never thought I would make that much. And then I was able to start living my life now instead of doing everything I can to build this thing up and live on 4 weeks of vacation a year. Now I work 5, maybe 10 at most hours a week when I'm really trying to do some things. And we spend a lot of time traveling and vacationing and just living the dream where you control your time. And it's enough. And that's what I talk a lot about is how much is enough, right? We don't have yachts and crazy things, but we have our time, which is something you can't get more of. You spend it without knowing it. And so to own our time and not have any stress is like the pinnacle of life, regardless of how much income is coming in.
When you have
so that was a lot.
That was a lot. No, when you have a family, having that freedom to spend time together versus always being at work, which is what a lot of families today have to do, either with one or both parents working a lot of times, sometimes more than one job. So it's really inspirational and motivating. I think a lot of us listening to you are thinking, wow, you make it sound so easy. And I know it's simple, but not necessarily easy. So
that's exactly what I say too. And people don't understand the difference until they really think about it. What I did was simple, but it took some initial risk and it took continuous action. You have to find your niche, and it's not rentals for everybody, right? People in San Diego, right? I'm sure you can't find rentals that cash flow very well because of how expensive things are there, because occupant owners want to live there. But you come to the Midwest where you have a lot higher percentage of folks that have to live here but can't get loans. And so they have to rent. And so in other markets, you have to find a different type of niche. And that may be something online, affiliate marketing, selling products, but you got to find your niche and just continuous, like Grant Cardone says. And Grant Cardone, very boisterous, very offensive in certain realms and terms. His books, 10X and Boba, Be Obsessed or Be Average, are some of the most motivating lessons for you to really put your foot on the gas and hustle and work harder than you ever have to then get to a point where then you can live.
It's people hear passive income, and there's always this illusion that passive income means something that you were able to just accomplish passively from day one. And I always have to tell people, no, passive income is an after effect, right? Once the engine's purring. But for anyone that's ever had a vintage car or something where you use what's called the choke, and I know a lot of younger listeners are thinking, I don't even drive a stick shift, right? But if for another examples, we used to have this one lawnmower that was gas powered, and you had a little pull cord, and you had to pull and pull. A little frustrating, but still eventually turned on. We're frugal too. We're not going to throw away a lawnmower just because it makes us pull that cord a few times. But it's work, right? Your heart rate would be up, but then it would just purr on and it would stay on and be a great thing. And passive income is sometimes like that. There's this upfront hard work that a lot of people can't do. Like they don't know what to do, or they don't want to spend that much work because they don't really know what's at the other end of it. So what do you do? Because you're on here talking about this, right? You could have easily done all of this and just stayed very private and never really talked about it to anyone. Like even your own family and friends don't necessarily have to know, but you're out here talking about it. What's your motivation?
So for 4 years, I goofed off. I did nothing. So from 2019 until, well, not really 49, just until the beginning of this year, I didn't talk about it. Besides my friends, my local friends, and I'm very close with guys that are also, whether they're passive or still active, but guys in real estate, guys doing big things in construction. But I never talked about it. And when I left the workforce, I was an extrovert. 2019, I was an extrovert, right? I ran large departments, 15, 20 engineers. I traveled around the country. I had engineers in different plants. I worked with executives. I built this big rental business, investing in private equity. Those are very extroverted, outgoing things. And then 2019, so when I walked away from the job, then boom, immediately COVID, right? 6 months later, was that, I think 6, 8 months later, and those two things, like I became so protective of my phone, my calendar, right? My calendar used to be double and triple booked. I didn't want to book anything in my calendar. People would want to have a meeting with me. And I'd be like, just give me your phone number. I'll give you a call sometime. And because I don't want to put something in my calendar. I don't know if I want to golf, if I want to go shooting, if I want to be traveling. I don't know. Do I just want to be working out and doing my red light therapy and hot tubbing, right? My self-care stuff. So I became, and then COVID just made it so worse. Like I became very introverted. And I went to a mastermind because I knew I needed to get out and start doing something. All I was doing was having fun and moving money around, right? Investing in private equity, selling a rental, buying a new rental. And I went to this mastermind and we did I know Tony Robbins does it. I don't know if he started, but this circle of life, this life wheel exercise where it's a spider diagram, you rate yourself from 0 to 10 in all these aspects of your life. And it's like faith and fitness and family, marriage and impact and wealth and all these things. And I scored myself very low it was like contribution. Like, what am I doing to help others? What am I doing to impact, contribute to society? And I scored myself very low. I'm like, I know I've known this. I want to do something. I tried to get that feeling through partnering with folks through like 2020 to 2023. And a lot of the partnerships went south, mostly people just trying to get to where I was even faster and skip steps as I'm trying to coach them to be a good steward because I'm providing them money and trying to teach a flipper or a wholesaler, or trying to work with real estate guys that want to be active while I want to be passive. But the partnerships didn't go the way they just went south and they didn't give me that feeling. And so at this mastermind is where folks told me, like, Zach, why aren't you sharing your story? Why aren't you coaching? Why aren't you podcasting? Why aren't you doing any of those things? And I was like, oh, it sounds like work. I don't want to do work. And if I have all these students, aren't I accountable if their deal starts falling apart Friday at 6 o'clock, or on the weekend and I'm at Disney with my kids, or I'm traveling? Like, I don't want to have to be accountable. And through talking to folks that are large scale real estate coaches, influencers, successful in real estate, through talking through a lot of them, they got me to understand that no, it's about helping others, not being an accountable like manager to them. And so that's where I was asked to go speak at a conference. And at first I was like, no, I'm going to be in Florida a week prior. I'm going to Costa Rica 2 weeks later. No, I'm not going to do it. And before I could text that message, it just hit me like, Zach, you're just going to keep getting the same result if you keep doing the same thing. If you keep being somewhat selfish and just living my life with my friends and family and not still trying to contribute, since I am still young and have a lot to do. So that's when I said, yeah, I'll come and speak. And okay, if I'm going to speak, I got to have a way to capture interest. So I should have a website. And then that's when a couple of folks like, why aren't you doing a podcast? And so I started the Passive Income Life podcast. And now there's a coaching group. And now just trying to teach the story of getting away, an avenue that I have very familiar with, of how to get your life back and how to control instead of being in this I kind of chuckle whenever I'm out on the road early in the morning. Normally it's only for flight or for golf, but I see these people in their dress clothes racing, right? Speeding to get to the office. And I'm just like, man, I remember that used to be me. That was me at 6 a.m. speeding to the office, trying to be the first one there to look the best and show that I was bleeding for the company. And now it's just such a foreign thing to me that just seems crazy.
What a shift. What a change. So who's your typical student? Because there's a lot of people that teach real estate, or you've named a couple books, great books.
Yep.
There's so many people out there teaching some of these concepts, but then students tend to gravitate towards just the person they have the best fit with. I think, who's the best fit for you? Like when you look at all your different students that come to you, is there any commonality at all, or is it completely all over the place?
It's someone with experience. I teach the passive income life and I teach advanced. I see, and I hate using these terms like advanced, like a guy who's very well known in real estate space, influencing space, teaching, coaching. I kept saying, you're an advanced investor. You got to come in and create an advanced investor course. And everything's relative. Like I don't see myself as an advanced investor. I look at people who are moving millions and tens of millions of dollars in big commercial and multifamily building. Like those are advanced investors, but it's all relative. My student, the person who's probably going to get the most from me is someone who knows how to buy real estate. They are just not good at scaling, at systems, at understanding what real estate can do. I just made a post today. Return on equity is something that a lot of folks don't think about. They're looking at cash flow and cash on cash return. And there's a reason why it makes sense to sell good cash flow. And that's when you have too much equity stuck in properties. And so it's just trying to coach and get people to understand these mechanisms that ensure when your money is working for you, that you're never buying a job. Because I've done that. I owned a 28,000 square foot trampoline arena where all the kids, right, jump on all those big trampolines and basketball hoops and stuff. And that was not an investment. That was me buying a job. And once it hit me, and I've done it a couple other times, and now I say, dude, I'm never buying a job again. If I want a job, I can go get a job, right? I got good degrees and good experience, but when I'm putting my money in something now, it needs to be very passive. Maybe after a certain period, if I got to buy something and turn it around and get involved, but then at some point it needs to be passive. I don't like things necessarily. Like I don't like flipping homes, right? That's just getting me an egg. That's going out, looking at a property, getting contractors, getting it done, going through inspections, getting reports of buyers that don't like this or don't like that. And then I got to go get this fixed and we got a closing date. And I don't like any of those things that have timelines and could cause stressors just to get a one-time egg. I would much rather go buy a new rental property, go through that similar type of process, but now collect $500 a month in perpetuity than to go do all that and get a one-time $15,000, $20,000 egg.
Makes sense. So do you believe in property managers or do you try to develop systems where you self-manage, but in a very passive way where the tenants handle most of their own issues because they're aiming to be?
Yep. So that's rent to own, like I mentioned. So I really have no need to have property management because I don't get calls for the screen door fell off the hinges, the ceiling fan's not working, the disposal's this, the furnace did this, the gutters are overflowing. No, the tenants are all responsible. They're earning equity. They have a buy price, an option price on that house. So they're responsible. And it gives them the freedom to do what they'd like, to change the paint, if they want to put up a fence, if they want to change flooring. I've had people redo kitchens. And it gives them that ability to make the home theirs versus how their life had been up until now. Okay, we can't change the home, but that's not a big deal. What is the big deal is every 2 or 3 years, the landlord sends me a 60-day notice because he's selling the property. And now I got to move up my whole life and hope to find the same school system for my kids. And so that is the biggest thing, I think, if you surveyed my tenants, is that they know they're in that house until they choose to leave or until they buy the property. So I'm never going to push them out. There is no end of contract with me. You can be there as long as you want to be there. I don't do this predatory like so many rent to own people do, just because they want to collect a deposit every 2 years. Somebody can't buy a house. I don't care about selling the house. I care about an owner occupant mentality, taking care of it. And if you buy it in a year, great for you. If we go 3 contracts, I rate the contract, give them 4-year option. But if we go 3 contracts, 10, 12 years later, I still don't, doesn't matter to me. But I don't have to have property management. I don't have a lot of the stresses of managing a rental. And that's given that nice cash flow plus appreciation, depreciation, all the benefits of owning real estate.
And then COVID devastated a lot of real estate investors. Did you fare better during COVID because your tenants had more skin in the game and more reason to stay timely with their payment?
I wish I could understand how, I mean, I've heard that too. I think the only areas it really crushed, I don't know, I don't know if there'd be more liberal policies. We had no issues here. People that did suffer any type of job issue, they got all that. We printed this country printed money, right? We gave out all this money out there, $9 trillion. The communities, there was so much stimulus that they were sending out. I was getting checks from the government for anybody could apply. And just, I don't even know how they had to show evidence of job impact. But yeah, I must have done 15 or 20 applications for a CARES Act, which was people they were getting their rent paid for because of issues. And some of these folks didn't even lose their jobs. Like I said, I don't know what the requirements were, but yeah, it wasn't bad at all. And COVID as a whole, or let's just say the $9 trillion stimulus as a whole, was enormous for folks who owned assets. I don't know if it's a dichotomy when the government prints money and folks getting the money feel good about it. It's truly the folks who own assets that benefit when the government prints money. It doesn't help the people that got the money. It helps them for a short period, but then assets all went up 40% in that time frame. And okay, a lot of folks got $6,000, $8,000, $9,000, but rents, the cost of real estate, everything has flown up well more to burn off the little injections that the folks got.
True. Even in markets that traditionally don't see big appreciation bubbles in the last few years, even markets have seen huge bumps in just the pricing of homes, which actually puts them even more out of reach for people to buy them and keeps that renter pool even stronger, in my opinion. But there's definitely.
Yeah, I was just writing a post about this is not an area, like you don't come to Ohio to invest for appreciation, right? I know what I teach and coach, and I have some turnkey providers that I recommend, and you come here for cash flow. But if you look so I sold a property actually today that I purchased in 2016, and my all-in was $44,000. And let's say we didn't do a lot of work there, but let's just say it was really worth 70 back then, which is probably fair. Yeah, I made some money in creating the value of fixing the property, but let's say it was worth 70 in 2016, sold right for 120 today. So that's 7% annualized appreciation, which is crazy. We know it didn't happen every year. We got 40% or 50% because of printing $9 billion. But it just goes to say, even in the Midwest, like you will still get good appreciation when inflation happens, when you still have a strong job market and kids moving out of parents' homes, and it's still out there. You don't have to go to great areas like yours, San Diego, to get good appreciation. You can still find it in the Midwest.
Amazing. I could talk for hours because, as everyone listening probably knows, I'm really into real estate. So I could chat. But I want to respect your time. And I know listeners have to also finish up their commute, their workout, wherever they're listening to this and joining us. So where do people connect with you if they want to learn more about your coaching programs and what you're up to? And pitch again that great podcast that you host where we should all listen in and tune in.
Yeah, so everything is going to be at real, REAL, realzachzimmer.com. So somebody already had zachzimmer.com, so it had to be realzachzimmer.com. So that's where everything is at. The podcast is also on there, but that is The Passive Income Life with Zach Zimmer. So that's on Spotify and iTunes. But yeah, they can listen to my journey. And then I do talk about all sorts of other investments I've been in, as well as how I've lost nearly $1 million in private equity and just all things that were supposed to be so great and passive. So I talk about my scale around how active versus passive versus risk versus return. It's this whole kind of three-way scale to be considering as you're looking how you invest your time and how you invest your money to try to get to this life. But yeah, I also have a freebie. I put together, I think it's like a 7 or 8 page PowerPoint on like my top 5 strategies of how I got to where I was at to 7-figure passive income. And they can get that by texting TPL for The Passive Life, TPL to 33777.
Amazing. And we will go ahead and publish that as well in our podcast guest directory of all the freebies, all the great resources that our podcast guests share episode after episode with all of us. And that is available at podcastguestgift.com, podcastguestgift.com for access to Zach's resource, as well as resources from all of our wonderful guests. Zach, it's been great talking to you. Always inspiring, very motivational. I'm sure everyone listening agrees. Thank you so much. Your time is extremely valuable. I know you don't like things on your calendar, yet you carved out time for this, and I am eternally grateful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad definitely folks will appreciate it. And yeah, they can always reach out for more info.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness. But money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use the coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.